Why is there such a big tendency for local bands to fail, and why do a lot of these bands handle it very poorly? Whatever you want to call them, local bands, underground bands, in this video I want to go over some of the things that are glaringly obvious as to why a lot of bands end up failing and why they have really faulty expectations of how the music industry works, whether it be the underground or the metal mainstream. And of course, if you end up enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let me know down below your thoughts of this topic. This video goes out to anyone that is a part of an underground band or someone that is interested in getting into underground music. As a whole, it's going to be a little blunt. It might not be the nicest thing to hear, but I think it's something a lot of people do need to hear. The first and biggest mistake, a giant tree with a lot of branches to it, would be sheer ego. And this comes in a lot of different forms, but the main form that ego comes in is, number one, thinking things are going to fall into your lap. Not everyone that forms an underground band is looking for some sort of notoriety. A lot of people like to chill in the underground. They're fine with their 50 monthly listeners. They don't really care about the numbers. They have their side hustle, whatever it may be, and they have their main job, and so this is just a hobby and an interest. And if that is the case, then that's perfectly fine. But when you start getting into things like merchandising, as well as touring, and the costs sort of add up and up and up, and you need to buy equipment and touring equipment, you need to be able to tour, gas money, food money, venues, booking places, printing merchandise, keeping that merchandise ready, making sure you have the ability to ship things out in a timely manner, the general branding, social media presence. When you get into that, there's unfortunately this feeling that it should just fall into your lap, that if you make music for long enough, then a label's gonna reach out to you, or you're gonna book that major opening act for a big band, and you're gonna skyrocket into fame and success in the metal or rock world, or at least get bigger. Mainstream is being used very loosely here. I think everyone knows that the metal and rock mainstream is not nearly the same as like the pop or hip hop or electronic mainstream. For every success story you hear about a DIY band blowing up like See You Space Cowboy that just did their thing for a while and didn't need to be on the radio or get a major label and ended up getting both of those things naturally, there are 1,000, 10,000 bands or more that live and die, are never going to be known, are going to live completely unknown. And that form of ego goes hand in hand with thinking that your music is better than it is. Like I said, it's not a great thing to hear for a lot of people, but the bands that breach out of the underground in some way either take a known formula and improve upon it, or alternatively do something really fucking good with something that pre-exists. So either they go above and beyond to do something no one has heard before that is very fresh and unique, or alternatively they just do something really good that already exists. And sadly for a lot of underground bands in extreme metal genres, black metal, death metal, grindcore, this is just not going to be a great expectation that your music is so forward-thinking and so interesting. I have heard hundreds of Autopsy copycats, 50 million Cannibal Corpse ripoffs. I've heard every atmospheric black metal band that sounds like Wallpaper, and every grindcore band that thinks that speed is the way to make a memorable album. Notice how all of the popular bands nowadays build on one of the two things that I mentioned, either doing something really good that already exists or doing something new that people haven't heard. You look at Sleep Token, taking everything and making this amalgamation, Lorna Shore being incredibly heavy and bringing symphonic deathcore to the masses, Knocked Loose being this beat-down hardcore metalcore band that is heavier than a lot of people have known and they breach through, and even death metal bands like Blood Incantation as well as Tomb Mold being very despondent and low and murky and taking that old school death metal style and bringing it into the new world in a very low-tuned sort of way. Even if they aren't the most original, they do what they do very well. Bands like Loathe and Vain taking metalcore music and infusing it with industrial music and nu metal influences and being very experimental and almost Deftonesy sometimes. Bands like Death Heaven breaking through because of the Black Gaze movement. Bands like Liturgy breaking through and being very polarizing because of how forward-thinking they were and how they were like no other black metal band that you were going to hear at the time. Grindcore bands like Wormrot and Nails being this absolutely frantic, erratic version of power violence and grindcore that were so heavy. Same with a band like Full of Hell with distortion and noise. Bellwitch making funeral doom metal music that was awe-inspiring and harrowing and so incredibly well textured and having so much dimension to it. See You Space Cowboy bringing back the ideas of the 2000s and 90s screamo and post-hardcore scenes and bringing it into the new sphere, mixing it with metalcore music, mixing it with sasscore. I could keep listing bands like this, but do you notice how it all falls into one of those two categories? And brand new is something I use loosely because I forget which like guitarist or vocalist said it, but it was a classic classic vocalist or guitarist, they were like, everything has been done before. Every riff has been written before. Every vocal line has been done before. So it has absolutely nothing to do with being brand spanking new. It's just doing something interesting. And even a band like Falling in Reverse, which I absolutely just hate, are doing something pretty interesting and unique. Ronnie's mixing all of these genre influences and vocal influences and electronic and pop music and piano into music and rapping into music and giant choruses. And so no, your music is not necessarily the most brand spanking new thing or the most unique, nor are you entitled to people giving you their time, especially when the music scene is absolutely oversaturated as all hell. Do you think people are going to go out of their way to listen to a local or underground band over some of these other bands that are doing something that are just flat out more interesting to them? And yeah, you may get a nice audience of people that just want to hear the same thing and like their tried and true tested formula because it's what they enjoy, it's what they are the most fond of, they like familiar comfort listening. It's really not going to pierce through that if you want to get further into your career in that way. And that kind of goes hand in hand with my next point. It is extremely luck-based. You can be very talented, you can be very good, but it is oversaturated. And if you aren't taking the steps necessary to put yourself out there, you are shooting yourself in the foot. With social media dominating things and TikTok dominating things, and if we're not even talking about the mainstream stuff, things like Bandcamp, things like promotional pages on YouTube, for example, Black Metal Promotion has done a fantastic job of getting a ton of black metal bands and melodic bands on the map. Same with Gore Grinder, the channel Gore Grinder. They release a ton of albums and get the rights to be able to show albums from a lot of very extreme genres like grindcore and gore grind and noise music, and that is a platform. Both of those are platforms that people put their music on, that hand their music over. Think of it kind of like a publishing company in a way. You are giving it to them and they are putting it in front of stuff. They are sustaining their channel by having new content, but they're also boosting your content up by putting it in front of people that would like it. And that is incredibly important to find the audience that likes the music that you perform. And with so many resources, you are just asking to never be discovered whatsoever. If you refuse to put your stuff on different platforms, if you just refuse to do social media entirely, you don't have to, but networking is an incredibly important thing. You should have a YouTube channel, you should have a Facebook or a Twitter page. You should be reaching out to these places to put your music out there. You should be on Bandcamp. You should be on Spotify. You should be on Apple Music. You should be anywhere that you possibly can to get your music out there. And if you aren't, and especially if you're performing semi-mediocre music, or at least music that everyone has heard before from a billion other bands because this is the music that they listen to, and you are just resting on your laurels and expecting a label to fall in your lap when there are other bands that are hustling, that are working their asses off, that are booking DIY tours, that are being at a loss and paying out of pocket to put themselves out there, whether it be through these platforms or through touring, and touring all across the place and losing money at it to try to get their passion out there because it's what they enjoy. You are asking for disaster. You are asking for failure. And it might not be what you would like to hear, but it is something that I feel like a lot of local bands and underground bands need to hear. And like I said, with the whole preface, if you just want to be underground, if this is just a little interest in a hobby you have, absolutely fine. But the amount of underground bands that seem to finger point and blame other factors and say that they should have been bigger than they were, or people should listen to them, or begging and pleading for listens, and then you go listen to their music and it's something that you've heard that's either worshiping a better band than they are, which that's fine if you have influences, but worshiping a band, feeling like a cover band of a pre-existing band that is better than you, or just doing something you've heard from a billion other bands, and then acting like a label is going to suddenly swoop down and carry them off into 100,000 listeners, it's just not going to probably happen. And my final point on this topic is you need to make sure that your expectations are not too big. Metal as a whole can be very idiosyncratic. Depending on the type of music you play, there are going to be plateaus, there are going to be places that you just aren't going to be able to pierce through. If you are a heavily distorted gore grind noise musician, you are probably not going to get a giant fan base, and that's probably not important to you. So most of this applies to genres that have had some sort of success, and I personally don't think that extremity is the type of thing that can push you away from having a bigger audience, because you can see a ton of bands blowing up in the modern sphere despite being very heavy, but they still build up a fan base. Lorna Shore and Knocked Loose are big examples of this. So even if you are heavy, I don't necessarily think that that means that you are shutting yourself away from a bigger fan base. You just have to take the steps to be able to improve yourself and mature as a musician, as well as put yourself out there and give yourself the best odds of being exposed. With that being said, is it always going to work? No, it's luck-based. There is a lot of music out there, and you shouldn't get discouraged or think that you're untalented simply because no one discovers you. You just have to understand that you need to appeal to your fan base, you need to make sure that you have music that they enjoy, and that you are putting yourself out there. And you have to cherish the fan base that you do have, because those are the people that are going to give word of mouth, that are going to go to your shows, that are going to buy tickets, that are going to buy shirts for you, and are going to be the ones that ride with you through this entire ride. But what are your guys' opinions of this topic? You can let me know down in the comment section below your opinions of why you think local and underground bands fail. Let me know down in the comment section below. Agree or disagree, there is no wrong answer. Can't wait to hear it. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the RV family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is, my name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.